In the grand hall lit by crystal chandeliers, the clinking of glasses echoed among congratulatory wishes for the 50th anniversary of Bennett Global Logistics. I, Harlow Bennett, among hundreds of guests, familiar faces from finance and the press. The atmosphere should have been my family's pride, until my younger sister, Sloane, stepped onto the stage with a cold smile. An urgent announcement from the board of directors, she read slowly, dragging each word. As of today, Harlow Bennett is suspended for financial fraud. The room exploded. Whispers spread like wildfire. Camera flashes burst non-stop, and eyes filled with scrutiny turned toward me. I caught faint chuckles, saw nodding heads, as if everyone had been waiting for this moment. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I simply watched my sister bask in the glow of tearing me down, because only I knew what she had just done had accidentally triggered a secret no one in the family ever suspected. A secret that could turn tonight into a turning point for the entire Bennett empire. The next morning, I stepped outside and saw newspapers stacked on street stands. The bold headline stretched across the front page. Harlow Bennett brought down by sister for embezzling company funds. Beneath it was a photo of me, stunned at the celebration, eyes locked on Sloane, my face cropped to look like a criminal unmasked. I grabbed a copy. My grip so tight the paper crumpled. Strangers glanced at me, some whispering. Overnight, my image had shifted from a leader tied to Bennett Global Logistics for 2 decades into a traitor in the public's eyes. My phone vibrated nonstop, dozens of messages, calls, bitter words. Were you really that greedy? I thought you were different from Sloane. Turns out, you're the same. Some didn't write at all, only sent the link to the article, a mocking gesture. Clients were more cautious, yet their emails dripped with suspicion. A long time, partner wrote, "We need confirmation of transparency before continuing the contract." Polite, concise words, but I read them as a sentence hanging over my head. Within the family, the blow hurt deeper. My father was silent. Not a call, not a word. He knew the books better than anyone, knew exactly what I had delivered, but chose to stand aside. My mother avoided me. I called, she didn't answer. I texted, she replied with a cold line, "The truth will come out, Harlow." A short sentence, but the doubt in it cut deep. That evening I went to my parents' house. The living room lights glowed, curtains slightly open. When I knocked, my mother cracked the door, eyes averted. "Go home, Harlow," she whispered, voice trembling but firm. "Mom, do you believe I stole from the company?" My voice broke. She turned away without answering. Behind her, I glimpsed my father on the sofa, frozen, eyes glued to the television replaying the evening news. He never looked at me, as if I were only a name on the financial broadcast. The door closed in my face, leaving me with darkness and cold that pierced through skin and bone. Driving back to my apartment, I switched on the radio. The announcer's voice was crisp, objective, but each word stabbed. According to internal sources, the financial fraud at Bennett Global Logistics may have lasted for years. The accused is Harlow Bennett, former executive vice president. I switched it off instantly, but the echo lingered. That night, I sat alone on the sofa, light from the computer screen spilling into the room. My inbox overflowed with messages, many from people who once toasted me at contract signings. Now they wrote, "We will suspend cooperation until further notice." Cold, detached words, as if 20 years of building trust had never existed. Rachel, my assistant, called close to midnight. Her voice was hoarse. "Harlow, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, though even I heard the lie in my tone. "I know the news isn't true. Everyone knows you never touched a penny outside the rules." I forced a laugh. "True or false doesn't matter, Rachel. Once the public makes up its mind, the truth bends with it. Sloane didn't only want the CEO chair. She wanted to ruin me entirely, leaving me with no way back." The next morning, I tried stepping out. At the corner cafe where I once met clients, I lowered my head to avoid stares. At the next table, 2 men whispered loudly, "Isn't that Harlow Bennett?" "Yeah, that's her. Heard she stole millions." They didn't even bother lowering their voices, as if I weren't there. Back home, leaning against the wall, bitterness seeped in. The whole world had turned overnight. Those who once praised me as sharp and brilliant now saw me as a fraud. The name Bennett, once pride, now weighed on me like a curse. But beneath it all, a fire stirred. I knew I wasn't guilty. And I knew Sloane had moved too soon. She thought a public announcement could bury me. But she had no idea that in my hands lay a trump card, a single signature that could collapse her performance in an instant. In my dark apartment, rain tapped steadily on the window as I lingered in silence. The city turned its back, yet my memory opened a door to 7 years earlier, when the company faced its greatest crossroads, the IPO. At 35, I had been on the board nearly a decade, carrying the weight to make Bennett Global Logistics strong enough for Wall Street. Everyone else celebrated. I was cautious. In this family, power never matched effort. It always bent to favoritism and schemes. So I sought out an old friend, Jonathan Reeves, who left law school early to become one of Nashville's sharpest corporate lawyers. We gathered in his small office, the desk lamp casting light over a thick draft contract. "Harlow, are you sure?" Jonathan asked slowly. I nodded. "If I don't, one day my own family will push me out. I need a shield, not a sword, a way to protect my work." He was silent for a long moment, then slid the draft toward me. "Fine. We'll call it the Shareholder Protection Agreement. The key clause: if your shares surpass 30%, you gain veto power over all strategic decisions. No one can overrule you." My palms were damp as I read the bold lines. It wasn't only a signature, it was a safety net for a future I couldn't predict. On IPO day, all eyes turned to my father and to Sloane, the chosen face of the company, speaking to the press. I, as always, worked behind the scenes. But hidden in my purse, a legally binding document rested quietly, fully signed, waiting for its moment. The irony was that Sloane herself, distracted by fundraisers and photo shoots, had signed the paper without reading, thinking it was a technical add-on. My father, trusting me to save costs, didn't ask questions either. In the years that followed, I quietly took the next step. Through small anonymous funds, I collected shares bit by bit, some from retired employees, some from minor investors cashing out. Each purchase carefully layered by Jonathan, so no one could trace it back. At a family dinner, Sloane boasted, "My network controls 40% of the shares now. Untouchable." I sipped my wine, smiled. No need to tell her I had already crossed the 30% mark, and with it, the veto power. Those years, I worked in the shadows. Sloane strutted on red carpets. I labored in boardrooms. Sometimes Jonathan would ask, "Why not use your power now? You could turn the board upside down." I shook my head. "Not yet. A shield only rises when the arrow is released." And now, 7 years later, the arrow had flown sharper and crueler than I had ever imagined. Sloane had humiliated me before the world. But she didn't know her carelessness years ago had armed me with the very weapon to overturn the game. I leaned back, on the sofa, eyes closed, remembering Jonathan's final words in that small office as we signed the agreement. Half joking, half serious, he said, "One day, Harlow, you'll thank this contract. Maybe when your whole family turns against you." Back then I laughed. I never thought that prediction would be true word for word. Out there, all of Nashville was talking about me like I was a criminal. But in my hands, the trump card was ready. 32% of the shares, past the threshold. And the veto power absolute, legal, indisputable. I opened my eyes, staring at the ceiling. The bitterness from yesterday's humiliation slowly gave way to a cold, clear focus. The night after the anniversary, my apartment felt like an empty shell. I turned off all the lights, letting the yellow glow from outside spill across the wooden floor. The black dress from that night still hung on the chair, faint with the scent of fake social embraces. Motionless, with a glass of wine untouched in my hand, I listened to the clock drag through every second. The phone rang. I almost ignored it, until the name on the screen made me freeze. Ethan Cole, director of an investment fund, an outsider who never missed a detail in Nashville's financial circles. I picked up, my voice gravelly. "Ethan, it's late. Why are you calling me?" His tone was calm but carried a weight that made me sit up straight. "Harlow, I'll be direct. We know you were set up, and you need to review the IPO files from 7 years ago. There's a signature that could save you." Outside, sirens wailed, but in the room, everything froze. I asked slowly, You know about that agreement? Not no, he replied. We kept a copy. Harlow, I've followed your company for years. People think Sloan is the face, but we know you're the brain. And I also know who had motive to create this embezzlement story. Ethan, why help me? A fund director doesn't suddenly care about a disgraced woman's honor. On the other end, he chuckled softly. We're not in charity, but we believe in real value, and we know if you go down, this company goes down with you. I'm not risking money in an empire lighting itself on fire. I walked to the glass window, looking down at streams of headlights flowing endlessly through the streets. My mind spun, but his words anchored me. You have a copy? I asked. Yes, tomorrow, come to my office. But Harlow. He paused, voice dropping lower. Be careful. Not everyone on the board wants the truth exposed. And you know, in this game, sometimes family is the most dangerous. The call ended, yet I still held the phone, the dark screen reflecting my tired face, but my eyes burned bright. The bitterness of my family turning away quickly shifted into resolve. I had prepared for this scenario, but I never thought I'd enter it so soon. The shield I created years ago, the shareholder protection agreement, wasn't only defense. Now, it could be the sword to cut through the lies strangling me. That night, I didn't sleep. I tore through the file cabinet, pulling out old documents, IPO reports, memos I had drafted with Jonathan. Papers stacked high on the desk, the yellow lamp lighting every familiar line. Each signature, each smear of blue ink whispered, "You were never weak, Harlow. You've been ready all along." Near dawn, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Don't trust anyone. Not even the person sitting next to you tomorrow. I read it over and over, a chill crawling through me. Who sent it? A warning or a threat? I didn't know, but I understood one thing. Sloan wouldn't stop at smearing me. She was casting a wider net. That morning, sunlight pierced through the thin curtains of my small apartment, but instead of warmth, it felt like hundreds of eyes watching. News about me still flooded everywhere. I sat at the desk, the thick stack of documents Ethan had returned after last night's meeting spread before me. These pages weren't vague excuses. They were raw truth, signed, dated, sealed, and all pointed back to Sloan. She had authorized the risky investments, the very transactions later twisted into evidence against me. Rachel looked at me, eyes glowing with both worry and determination. Are you sure about this? Once it's public, Sloan will go crazy. She chose to attack me in public. I'll answer in a way she won't expect. We called every newsroom, every journalist who had published the false story. I promised nothing except one thing. If you want the truth, come. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Fairmont Hotel, 12th floor conference room. The press conference started right on time. The room was packed, cameras, microphones, lenses crowded together. As I entered, whispers rose, lenses zoomed on me. People waited to see how the fraud would explain herself. I chose a simple black suit, my hair tied back. I wanted them to see my eyes and hear my words, not be distracted by glamour. I placed the documents on the table, drew a deep breath. Thank you for coming, I began, voice clear in the microphone. I know my name has appeared in headlines with heavy accusations. I didn't speak up right away, not because I had nothing to say, but because I needed evidence solid enough to stand before the public. A reporter raised his hand. Mrs. Bennett, are you saying the reports of fraud are false? I met his gaze. Not false, they were staged. Whispers surged. I opened the folder, holding up pages with Sloan's signature. These are the full records of the so-called suspicious investments. Note carefully, none of these signatures are mine. They belong to Sloan Bennett, the current CEO of Bennett Global Logistics. Cameras clicked furiously. I continued. While I managed operations, Sloan approved financial strategies. She signed these, and now, instead of owning responsibility, she pinned it on me. Why? Because she knows another truth. I hold veto power in this company, and that terrifies her. A female reporter lifted herself from the chair, her voice urgent. You said veto power? Can you explain further? I gave a faint smile. I will, when the time is right. Today, I only want to prove one thing. The accusations against me are baseless. and the one behind them is none other than the current CEO. I paused, letting the words sink in, letting the room absorb the shift. They had come expecting excuses. Instead, they watched me expose my sister before their lenses. Another reporter asked, "If what you say is true, why didn't the board notice?" I answered firmly, "Because they never looked past the surface. They trusted images, smiles before the press. The real work is in the numbers, in the contracts. I lived them. They only saw the flashbulbs." I saw doubt turn to curiosity, then to belief in many eyes. Rachel handed me another file. I opened it, revealing a chain of internal emails from Sloan, instructing subordinates to hide losses. Some journalists rushed to capture every line on screen. As I finished, a hand rose at the back. A reporter from a major network asked bluntly, "Mrs. Bennett, do you think this is no longer a family issue, but a crisis of trust for the entire industry?" I looked straight into his camera, making sure the audience at home saw my eyes. "I think the real crisis isn't one person being framed. It's that we allowed lies, dressed as family loyalty, to survive too long. And today, I choose to expose it." The room erupted. I closed the file and walked out into a storm of flashing lights. In that moment, I knew I had done what I had to, break the silence. I was no longer the one suffering quietly. I had shown the world that if Sloan wanted a public fight, I would meet her with the truth in hand. But before I could savor the aftermath, Sloan struck back that same afternoon. The evening news opened with the anchor's grave voice. "A newly released recording this afternoon reveals Mrs. Harlow Bennett allegedly admitting she once plotted to seize control of Bennett Global Logistics. The recording has sparked immediate controversy within the board." On screen, the headline scrolled, "Shocking secret. Did Harlow want to steal the company?" The voice on the tape was mine, but the words were cut and spliced beyond recognition. "One day, this company has to belong to me. I won't let Sloan sit in the CEO chair forever." Heard out of context, anyone would believe I was plotting a takeover. In reality, those words came from a long discussion with the strategy team. I had said, "One day, this company must belong to the next generation. I won't let Sloan sit in the CEO chair forever if she doesn't have the ability to keep the company safe." The meaning was entirely different, but Sloan had cut it short, twisting it into evidence against me. My phone rang nonstop. Rachel called first. "Harlow, have you seen it? They're broadcasting it everywhere." I saw. "It's clearly doctored, but the public doesn't care. What are you going to do?" I looked out the window, my voice firm. "We have the original, and I know who's keeping it." At that moment, an email arrived from the board. "Emergency meeting at 8 a.m. tomorrow. You are required to attend and explain." The signature below was Chairman Peterson, the one man I knew would never side with me. I dialed Mason Hill, former head of IT, once under my management before Sloan forced him out. Mason was one of the few I trusted completely. He picked up after a few rings, his voice tired and rough. "Harlow? It's been a while. I'm guessing big trouble? Do you remember? The strategy meeting back then? The one where I talked about the CEO role and the responsibility of keeping the company safe?" Mason chuckled softly. "I remember. I'm the one who saved the full original recording." "You guessed right." I exhaled, tension easing. "Mason, I need it. Tomorrow. I'll send it to you." "But Harlow, are you sure you want to go all the way? Sloan won't back down." I paused, then answered, "I don't have another choice." That night, I hardly slept. News, commentary, online insults circled me like a storm. People cut the recording into short clips, spliced with my stunned face at the anniversary, turning me into the perfect villain for the public. The next morning, I walked into the boardroom. 12 faces turned toward me, heavy and tense. The projector sat ready on the table. Sloan in the center seat, confident, lips curling when she saw me. Chairman Peterson began, "Mrs. Bennett, we listened to the recording last night. It is clear you once expressed intent to seize the company. Do you have anything to say?" I raised my head, meeting each of their eyes. "If you want the truth, listen to all of it, not fragments spliced together." Rachel entered, placing a USB on the table. Mason had sent it at dawn. I plugged it in, pressed play. The room filled with sound. My voice clear, complete. One day, this company must belong to the next generation. I won't let Sloan sit in the CEO chair forever if she doesn't have the ability to keep the company safe. We have a responsibility to employees, to clients, not to the Bennett bloodline. The missing words now restored, overturning the meaning entirely. I turned to the board, calm but sharp. This is the original recording. You witnessed how you were deceived. Sloan shot up, face red. You staged this. You hired someone to mimic your voice. A board member shook his head. No, I was there in that meeting. I remember clearly. This is what Harlow said. Sloane's eyes flickered. I looked straight at her, my voice low but carrying through the room, cutting my words and releasing them to the media. That is the real scheme. The tension crackled. Peterson cleared his throat, forcing composure. Clearly, the board must reconsider carefully before making any ruling. As for you, Sloan, do you wish to explain the recording that aired last night? Her fists clenched, but no words came. I knew her strike had backfired. As I stepped out of the boardroom, Rachel whispered beside me. Did you see their eyes? They're starting to doubt Sloan. I gave a thin smile. Doubt isn't enough. They need to see the raw truth. Sloan had thrown everything at me, but each counterattack only gave me another chance to prove myself. Just outside, I found Mason Hill waiting in the hallway. In a pale blue shirt, he held a thick folder. When our eyes met, I knew this was the blow I needed. Harlow, Mason said softly, rough but steady. I can't let them keep fabricating. This is the full set of original emails, plus the unedited audio file. It proves clearly that Sloan ordered the splicing to take you down. He handed me the folder. I flipped through quickly, each line slicing through Sloan's mask. Remove this part, stitch that sentence, make it sound like Harlow wants the CEO seat. Her own words, ending with her electronic signature. I looked up, swallowing hard. You kept this all these years? Mason nodded. I knew the day would come, just didn't think it'd come so soon. I laid my hand on the folder. It felt like I held the key to a locked door that had been shut for years. That afternoon, as I left headquarters, a sleek black car stopped at the entrance. The window lowered, revealing Anderson, a senior board member. Inside were Mrs. Lopez and Mr. Grant faces. I thought only ever bowed to my father. And Sloan. Harlow, get in, Anderson called. I hesitated, but their serious eyes drew me in. The air inside was thick. Anderson spoke first. We cannot openly oppose Sloan, not yet. But you see, the company is losing trust. Clients are unsettled. If you can hold them, we'll stand with you. I scanned their faces. Mrs. Lopez tilted her head. We don't need you to win now. We need proof you can keep revenue steady. As long as clients stay, you'll have leverage. I answered slowly. I built every one of those relationships with sweat and years. They're not loyal to the name Bennett Global Logistics. They're loyal to me. I can call them, and they'll listen. Grant nodded, relief on his face. Good. Then we'll wait for your move. But be careful. Sloan still controls the media and your father. He hasn't shown support for you yet. The car drove me back to my apartment. Before leaving, Anderson added, if you prove clients won't leave, the board will have no reason to keep Sloan. The door shut, leaving me in the cold wind, the folder in my hand heavy as fate. That evening, I spread the documents across the dining table. Rachel and I combed through every detail. She pointed at an email. Look, Sloan herself ordered the media team to release the splice tape. This is gold. I nodded, but my thoughts had already moved further. Evidence isn't enough, Rachel. Clients are the real vote. I opened my contacts list, scrolling through familiar numbers. The first call I made was to Bethany Clark, CEO of a national supermarket chain, our largest client. Beth, it's me, Harlow. The line was silent for a moment, then her voice came. I saw the news. Harlow, is it true? You've known me for 10 years. Have I ever lied to you? No, but your sister's company is in chaos. I can't risk my supply chain. Exactly why, Beth. Let me keep running your account directly. I have my own team, and I won't let you miss a single order. Silence. Then Beth spoke softly. If you're still standing, we'll stand with you. But I want the contract signed under your name, not your sister's company. You'll have it. That night, Rachel and I called nonstop. Every client, every partner. Some hesitant, some angry, but in the end, most agreed. They trusted me more than Sloan. By dawn, I set the phone down. Papers covered the desk, but my mind was clearer than ever. Mason had given me proof. The board's insiders had given me an opening, and the clients had given me trust. I knew this was the moment. The door to overturn everything had opened, and this time I wouldn't miss it. That morning, I walked into the headquarters of Bennett Global Logistics with a strange mix of weight and calm. Ahead, the company name gleamed in the first sunlight. To me, it was no longer pride. It was battleground. The extraordinary shareholders' meeting was summoned in the grandest room of the building, where once historic deals were signed. Today, the dark brown leather table wasn't for contracts, it was the arena for a ruthless power struggle. Sloan was already seated at the head of the table, her bright red dress making her stand out against the row of dark chairs. When she saw me walk in, she flashed a cold smile. So you came. I thought after being exposed, you'd know better. I placed my folder on the table. Around me, countless eyes followed. My father was there too, sitting quietly on the left, his expression heavy, unreadable. Chairman Peterson began. Today, we meet to review the shareholder status and role of Mrs. Harlow Bennett. Some unfavorable evidence has surfaced, and the board must decide. Sloan nodded, rose to her feet, her voice ringing through the room. Ladies and gentlemen, these past days the company has become the city's laughingstock, and the only reason is my sister. She has deliberately sabotaged the firm's reputation, using the media to attack her own family. That is not the behavior of a loyal shareholder. She paused, casting me a triumphant glance. And today, I propose the board vote to completely remove Harlow from this company. Some shareholders nodded, a few whispered. I stayed silent, letting her finish. When Sloan lowered herself into the chair, Peterson turned to me. Mrs. Bennett, do you have anything to say before we vote? I rose slowly, opened my case, and drew out a thin file that felt like a boulder in my hands. I laid it on the table, then looked around the room, pausing on each face. I won't repeat what you've seen on television. I'll remind you. The truth always finds a way to surface. But I didn't come here to defend myself. I came to remind you of something that has been conveniently forgotten. This is the shareholder protection agreement, signed 7 years ago, right before the company went public. Do any of you remember? A few faces furrowed, searching their memories. I continued, voice clear. Clause 3, Section B. Whenever a single shareholder holds more than 30% of the stock, that shareholder has veto power over all strategic decisions, including the appointment or removal of executives. I stopped, then locked eyes with Sloan. I currently hold 32%, which means the veto power is mine. The room erupted in noise. Shareholders whispered, chairs screeched as people shifted in shock. My father frowned, deep lines creasing his forehead. Sloan shot up, her voice shrill. Impossible. You're lying. You don't own that many shares. I control this company. Calmly, I opened another file and slid it toward Peterson. This is the list of small funds I used to acquire shares over the past 7 years. All legal, all recorded. You can verify anytime. And if you doubt further, ask. The securities registry. Peterson flipped through, his eyes widening. He looked up, his voice dropping. The figure is indeed 32%. Sloan paled, staggering back a step. No, you can't believe her. This is a scheme, a fraud. I met her eyes, my tone even but sharp as a blade. A scheme? If it is, then it was your carelessness that signed it 7 years ago. You were busy parading in gowns and on stages, while I was buried in boardrooms. Who else can you blame but yourself? I felt the room's gaze shifting from suspicion to shock, then to respect. Grant, the man who had met me privately days earlier, spoke firmly. If this clause is valid, then clearly, any attempt to remove Harlow is meaningless. The veto power belongs to her. Mrs. Lopez nodded. And after what we've seen, I believe she can hold clients and revenue. That is what matters most. I inhaled deeply, then addressed the room. You may dislike me, dislike my ways, but face the truth. Who brought contracts to this company? Who earned clients' trust? And who turned it into a stage for personal power games? No one replied. Only Sloane's burning glare remained, but she had no argument left. The evidence was undeniable. I closed the file, my voice resolute. From today forward, every strategic decision requires my signature. And I will use that power, not for revenge, but to protect the legacy of Bennett Global Logistics, the legacy I have spent my life building. Peterson nodded slowly. Harlow is correct. The veto power is hers. This meeting is adjourned. I gathered my files and rose to my feet. As I walked out, I felt the shift: no more doubtful stares, only caution and even respect. Behind me, Sloane was motionless, her hands white-knuckled, eyes blazing with a hatred I had never seen so raw. A chair screeched loudly. Sloane leapt up, her face flushed, eyes wild. "Don't you see?" She, time screamed, her voice cracking the tense air. "This is betrayal. She's not against me, she's against this family." I placed my hand lightly on the table, waiting for her echo to die. All eyes turned to me, awaiting my response. I drew a steady breath, my words cutting clear as steel. This is not betrayal. This is protecting the company from stupidity. A family can err, but the company cannot pay with thousands of jobs, with the trust of clients. A loud bang shook the table. My father, Edward Bennett, the lifelong patriarch, showed panic for the first time. He stood, hand trembling as he pointed at the document. What is this? Why did I sign? I didn't know." "You did sign 7 years ago, along with the board." I explained then. "A structure to protect shareholders, so the company wouldn't fall to incompetence. You thought it was routine paperwork, so you didn't read carefully." His face turned ashen, shoulders trembling. For the first time, he looked less like the powerful figure I'd known, more like an old man realizing his irreversible mistake. Sloane lunged, grabbing the papers, flipping through desperately, hoping for a flaw. But the blue signatures of my father and the board members sat clearly at the end. She stammered, No, this is fake. She tricked us all." Peterson's voice was heavy. "No one was tricked. This document was notarized, legally filed. We verified the signatures. Harlow is correct. This is the truth." Murmurs rose. Some shareholders dropped their gaze, avoiding Sloane's eyes. Others nodded quietly, as if finally understanding why I had stayed so calm. This company cannot be dragged further into petty takedowns. Clients need stability, employees need trust. I'm ready to bear the responsibility. But responsibility means facing truth, not fabrications. Peterson turned to the board. "We must decide. Who agrees to keep Sloane as CEO?" A few hesitant hands lifted, then dropped when silence prevailed. "Who agrees to let Harlow assume the CEO role, by the veto power in this document?" Hands rose, one by one, firm and without hesitation. I looked around, meeting their eyes, seeing the majority shift toward me. Sloane nearly sobbed. "You're all insane. She'll destroy this company. She only wants power." I turned to her, my voice low but steady. "If I wanted power, I'd have used my veto long ago. I waited until today because I wanted you all to see who truly deserves it." Finally, Peterson struck the gavel, his voice booming like a verdict. "The board has voted. As of today, Mrs. Harlow Bennett officially holds the position of CEO of Bennett Global Logistics." The room filled with murmurs, some discreet handshakes, some cautious stares. I breathed deeply, a strange weight pressing on me. Not triumph, not gloating responsibility. Sloane collapsed into her chair, hand half covering her face. My father stared at me for a long moment, his eyes conflicted. He whispered loud enough for me to hear. "I never thought you would plan this far ahead." I answered softly, eyes fixed on the document. "I didn't plan to betray anyone. I planned so that what grandfather built with his life wouldn't be burned down by his own blood." Less than a week after that decisive meeting, the news spread like wildfire. The press changed its tune. The same papers that once blared, "Harlow Bennett embezzled company funds," now rushed to print. The woman who turned public humiliation into the reversal of the century. They analyzed every detail of the shareholder protection agreement, of how I quietly accumulated shares, of the reversal that left the board stunned. On television, commentators called it one of the smartest strategic counterattacks in Tennessee's corporate history. Meanwhile, Sloan completely collapsed. The board not only forced her to step down as CEO but also stripped her of board privileges. Former partners shook their heads and avoided her, while some once close allies hurried to cut ties. In just days, the woman once featured on business magazine covers became a cautionary tale whispered about an example of arrogance gone wrong. I was too busy to gloat. The company, after such upheaval, needed a steady hand. I worked day and night meeting clients, gathering with employees, restoring trust. The hesitant handshakes of partners slowly turned into confidence when they saw me standing firm, decisive yet fair. One afternoon, as I left a meeting room, I saw my father waiting in the hallway. He looked older, shoulders bent, silver hair falling across his forehead. His eyes no longer held the authority of the past, but a trace of bitterness, even regret. "Harlow," he called, voice rough and slow. I stopped, keeping a distance. He stepped closer, hands trembling. "I should have chosen you from the beginning." The words sounded less like recognition, more like a confession. I stared at him silently. For years I had longed to hear something like that, but now it no longer tasted sweet. I answered softly, loud enough for him. "I didn't need you to choose me. I chose myself long ago." He lowered his head, as though the weight in his chest had dropped onto his frail shoulders. I was wrong. I was blind. Sloan always knew how to say what I wanted to hear, and you always said what I didn't. I chose comfort over truth. I gripped the folder in my hands, emotions surging unnamed. Anger, pity, or simply exhaustion. "Do you know what hurt me most? Not that you chose Sloan, but that you knew I was capable and ignored me anyway because I didn't fit your image of an heiress." He closed his eyes, sighing. "I sacrificed everything, only to end up with this failure." I looked at him, the man who had been a towering mountain in my childhood, now standing like a broken tree. My heart softened, but not enough to forgive. "Dad," I said evenly, "I'm not doing this against you. I'm doing it for the thousands of people in this company. They don't deserve to be dragged into Sloan's games. If you really regret, then let me work my way. Don't interfere anymore." He nodded faintly, turned, and his figure disappeared around the corner, leaving me standing alone. The next day, I settled into my new office, the one that had belonged to my father, then to Sloan, and now to me. On the desk lay a stack of newspapers, still smelling of ink. The front pages bore my name and my photo at the press conference. Harlow Bennett, new CEO, the woman of the century's reversal. Rachel came in, setting down a hot cup of coffee. "You should be happy. The press is calling you a hero." I shook my head, still staring out the window at Nashville, stretched under the morning sun. A hero? Heroes live on front pages. Out here, I know tomorrow someone will try to bring me down again. This world never stops hungering for blood. Rachel smiled but said nothing. She knew me better than anyone. The desk phone rang. I picked up. It was a familiar reporter's voice. "Harlow, are you ready to share a lesson for young entrepreneurs? How did you turn humiliation into victory?" I let out a soft laugh, then replied, "A lesson? It's simple. Never let anyone decide your worth. And if they try to bury you, let their own hands dig you back into the light." My new CEO office was on the top floor, glass walls surrounding me, overlooking Nashville's skyline. That night, I didn't rush home. The building was mostly dark, only streetlights and neon signs flickering outside. The next day, I occupied my new office, the same space that had belonged to my father, then to Sloan, and now to me. On my desk, among piles of files, lay the first headline: Harlow Bennett fired for financial fraud. I kept it not to remember pain, but to remember the strength of coming back. Next to it, I had placed a red pen and written carefully, "And now, she owns it all." I stared at the words, red ink glowing against black and white, like a scar turned into a medal. Rachel knocked, entered with 2 cups of hot coffee. She set one in front of me, her face tired yet bright. "Still here? You haven't rested in days." I smiled, swirling the cup. "I can't leave now. Too much needs rebuilding. The company must stand on solid ground, not the illusions Sloan left behind." Rachel was across from me, tilting her head. You know, that picture of you holding the newspaper, it'll become iconic. I bet someone will frame it here. I chuckled softly. If one day the employees look at it, I want them to see not victory, but a reminder. Truth can be buried, but it never disappears. Outside, headlights stretched into endless streams of light. I recalled the faces in the boardroom, the nods of agreement. They hadn't chosen me out of affection. They chose me because they had no choice. But that didn't bother me. I didn't need favoritism. I needed recognition through work. Moments later, the phone rang again. Peterson's voice came through. Congratulations again, Harlow. I received emails from 3 major partners. They confirmed they'll stay, not pull out as threatened. I replied briefly, good, thank you. But remember, they didn't stay for Bennett Global Logistics. They stayed because of trust in a person. And it's my responsibility to keep that trust. When I hung up, I noticed my father standing at the door, his shadow long on the floor. I signaled Rachel to leave, then opened the door. He stepped in, his eyes no longer fierce, but heavy with sorrow. Harlow, I know you don't want to hear this, but I must say it. When I saw that line, he pointed to the newspaper marked in red. I felt pride and pain. Pride because you stood strong. Pain because I was the one who let you fall in front of the world. I stayed silent, letting him sit. His shoulders slumped, his voice low. I chose the wrong person, and I nearly destroyed this company with my blindness. I replied slowly, what's past can't be changed. But you can choose how to look at the future. If you truly care about grandfather's legacy, let me do it my way. No interference, no control. He nodded lightly, eyes moist but tearless. I knew this was his final surrender, the proud father finally admitting defeat. After he left, I turned back to the desk, my eyes on the red words again. This time, I didn't see them as only about me. They were a declaration for everyone ever dismissed, sidelined by prejudice, or betrayed by their own family. I walked to the glass wall. Nashville glittered like a galaxy beneath my feet. I pressed my hand to the cool glass. A strange feeling rising, not anger anymore, but responsibility. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new enemies in the ruthless business world. But tonight in this office with the city lights blazing, I knew I had reclaimed the right to write my own story. The newspaper with the red line still lay there, an unshakable reminder. And now she owns it all. Every family story carries a lesson, sometimes sweet, sometimes bitter. For me, from being ridiculed on headlines, I ended up holding the future of the company. But the price wasn't sleepless nights, it was cracks inside my own home. I believe all of us have faced moments of doubt, exclusion, even betrayal from our own blood. So what do you think? If it were you, would you stay silent, or rise to reclaim your voice? Share your thoughts in the comments because maybe your story could be strength for someone else. And don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about family, betrayal, and those surprising reversals that change everything. Every journey holds its own worth, and maybe you'll find yourself somewhere in them.